Hey guys, we're back. How's it going, Graham?
Hey, good. Doing well. What about yourself?
Good, man. It's good to see you. It's a good week. Good week in Bitcoin. A lot going on. I'm excited to chat a little bit today. It seems like there's been some closure on some certain things. The tornado cash news was today. The
Yep.
guy, the developer, ended up getting look like some time. Um, and the interesting thing about this that I kind of wanted to kick off with today. For those who know who June Seth is, did you listen to the SoundCloud file he posted, Graham?
I don't know. Maybe I might have listened to a tidbit of it. So I think so.
Okay, yeah. So what June Seth has done is he basically shared a SoundCloud video because he's been getting calls from Coinbase saying, "Hey, this is customer support. We want to help you." And he was like, "I know what you're doing. I want to do this business." And the kid basically was like, "All right, I'm not support." And he was just like, we're making like $10,000 a day, 300K a month. And he's had multiple friends who have done it and they end up going to jail, but they get like 1 year in jail. But they hide all their money. When they get out, they have like two, three, $4 million. That was ultimately the takeaway. And the kid just stayed on the call for an hour talking to him and all this, and then they hung up. So that's one thing. The other thing is, as it relates to Tornado Cash, this guy got a 5 year, 4 month prison sentence. And the thing that's interesting to me about this is, bankers do a lot of stuff, and they don't really get a lot of prison time. They get maybe a slap on the wrist and a fine. But this kid that June Seth was talking to was talking about his friends might get a year or two. This guy's only
Mhm.
getting 5 years, and this is just interesting to me because there's 2 points. Number one, this guy's writing code, and if you look at some of the headlines, basically because he wrote code and pushed updates to the code, even though he wasn't doing anything other than that, like he got in trouble. But the other piece is it's interesting that there's actual scammers out there calling people, stealing money over and over again, and they get 1 year in jail, and then
Mhm.
they get out and do it again because the incentive is so high to do social engineering scams to take advantage of people who you know willingly give their social security number, their email, their phone number, their name to some of these institutions, and then they get hacked. But it's a wild world. Like,
Yeah.
just this in general has been very interesting this last week.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it just shows that like these people, like the government's court of law, all of those things, just don't understand like any of it really. Like they don't understand like that. Yes, like those looking between the two that you mentioned, the Tornado Cash and some of these scammers. I mean, the sentencing should be like reversed, right? It should be flipped, and there should be much harsher punishments for those people that are scammers. Because, like you said, if I think in a lot of people's minds, if I can make 5 million and do a year in jail and keep that 5 million, like shoot, I'll do that. It's a fine trade off, and so people are going to keep doing it. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And then I mean for the Tornado Cash case, I think that it's that was in where was it that he got
Was it?
convicted? It was the Netherlands or
I think it
something.
was the Netherlands.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's like the ruling, the way that the judge ruled it was pretty horrible, and basically kind of the way that they were classifying it was very much like anyone that does service providing for cryptocurrencies, non-custodial or otherwise, is beholden to the same kind of punishment. So that was, I think, the way that they interpreted it and kind of ultimately came to their decision is incredibly problematic. But I mean, that's in the Netherlands. I think that there's another version of it here in the U.S. So we're going to see how that goes. But I mean, it's horrible to see, and it's complete misunderstanding of the technology and what's happening, and then it's also, I think people, I think they're, I mean, trying to make examples and things like that out of service providers that really just don't. At the end of the day, they don't understand what they're talking about, what they're ruling on. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we are facing right now is getting these people up to speed that are ultimately deciding kind of the fate of a lot of folks.
Yeah. Yeah, and it brings up one good message that Marty and Parker were talking about this last week. I kind of tweeted about it, but Bitstein spoke a few months ago about rhetoric, and he was referring to like Aristotle's papal and rhetoric and how to handle, talking to people. And what Parker covered in his podcast with Marty was basically like, the dollar doesn't necessarily align with American values, but Bitcoin does. And ultimately, for us as entrepreneurs, Bitcoiners, business owners, whenever you look at Bitcoin as like something a doctor down the road is using, or a landscaping company, or a lawyer, you're not going to say Bitcoin's for criminals. It's what your neighbor is using, and we need to, number one, not the goal isn't necessarily to orange pill people. The goal is to like help them learn and understand Bitcoin and accept it. And as more people use it, you can't really just say these people are criminals, because it's like, it's not true. This guy gave surgery to my mother, my wife, and they took care of them. He's our neighbor. But the other piece is whenever, someone says like, oh, this is, X, or this is Y, or this is bad, or it's bad for the environment. It's like, oh, it only uses the energy of Denmark. We need to be using way more than that. This is giving, the ability for people globally to have money that isn't debased. And a lot of these, like if you saw Metaplanet this last week, anyone who saw like Dylan LeClaire, he's now doing Bitcoin consulting for them and like kind of guiding their Bitcoin strategy. They're specifically sourcing the debasement of currency and trying to have, many of these benefits that are always talking points we have, and that needs to be normalized. Like it's clearly like there's an economic use case, not criminal. It is like very rational. It's made for business owners and individuals. Like it's the respectable thing to do if you're a steward of capital, or a steward of providing for your family. And that's the way we need to approach it and frame it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree, and I think that there's a lot of people stuck in the perception around Bitcoin and the opposite of that. The old ways that people had this like really horrible perception of, and I think that some of them are unintentionally sticking to it because they are just not willing to educate themselves. The other side is they are sticking to it because they see Bitcoin as such a threat to their position in certain aspects of what they do. And so I think that that's the other side of it too. There's some just straight up ignorance, and then there's some that are understand it but are choosing to kind of talk about it and view it in this kind of counterintuitive way or untrue way.
Yeah, and it's easy to feel defeated hearing and seeing these things, but there's also people on guard like Senator Loomis and Ron Wyden, who are actually standing up saying, hey, let's not criminalize this in America. This is, very valuable technology for the, keeping a foothold as like one of the leading nation in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great to see, people doing this, because there's a lot of capital coming into Bitcoin. Even what was it? The Wisconsin pension today disclosed their top 10 pension. They're number 9 in America. And they disclosed a $99 million position into Bitcoin. So this isn't a criminal thing. Again, this like pensions,
right.
That's the money that supports doctors, police officers, firemen.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree. And it is great to see things like this come out, where we're kind of the other side, where there's been just so much, a lot of people have always been on the side of, Bitcoin is bad. And it's great to see folks like Senator Loomis and Wyden come out and, kind of support it and say that, basically what is happening is incorrect, and we need to change it. So it's great to see this. And it's also, I think in the last week we've seen, President Trump candidate, whatever, ex-president, future, presidential candidate Trump, saying how he sees, what is going on in kind of the DOJ and SEC and all these things as, a clear attack on Bitcoin and crypto. And he is very much a proponent for supporting Bitcoin, and he really wants to kind of put an end to the ways of which we have been, kind of going about this. So that has been very positive to see. So I'm hopeful that things will change. I mean, I think there's a lot hinging on this upcoming election. I mean, I know that Senator Warren is up for re-election as well. So there's a lot of these the decision makers that are pushing these kinds of negative sentiments or rulings and all these things against kind of Bitcoin they're up for re-election. And I think that in November it's going to be a pretty big and important one for Bitcoin and the broader crypto industry.
Yeah. Yeah, on a lighthearted note, there's a lot of talk on Twitter for folks, doing 100 push-ups for Bitcoin.
Mhm.
So keep working on your fitness. We can't control some of these things, but what we can do is we can focus on our fitness ourselves and the variables we do control. And that's
Mhm.
all that being said, one thing I woke up this morning to is I was just like many people, stuff that's going on, it might frustrate you a little bit. And I was like, what is within my control? And I decided to put on dress pants and a dress shirt today. I was like, I'm going to be more professional, dress for what I want to see happen. And it's made a pretty big impact on me mentally today. And I just think we got to focus on what we can control.
Yep, definitely. No, I totally agree. So yeah, that's a good take.
Yeah. This is cool. And I honestly didn't know this was possible, Graham. So maybe you can kind of speak to it. But El Salvador, they publicly, shown, they said like a year or two ago, they're going to be buying 1 Bitcoin a day. And they are doing it and they're displaying it for the entire world to see with their own mempool. So for those who are not technical and don't know what the mempool is, you can go to mempool.space and you can see what is happening within the Bitcoin blocks. These are the ones that have yet to be mined, where people are placing a bid to get their transaction in the next block, and these are the blocks that have been mined. So you can
Mhm.
load this online and see it, or you can run your own locally on your own device. But what the government of El Salvador has done is they're running their own mempool, but they're also disclosing their treasury in like a transparent way. And I didn't know this was possible. Like, can you kind of articulate maybe
Yeah.
like what this is?
Yeah, so I mean, I think to be specific on the technical, so this isn't their own mempool because like the mempool, there is no the mempool. The mempool is just every individual node on the network has a view of what they see as their own mempool, which is essentially pending transactions that are waiting to be confirmed into a block. This, what the El Salvador government is doing, is running the mempool.space like software of kind of showing both like the mempool like from their node's perspective as well as like the full block history and whatnot. But then they've also basically just customized kind of the front end dashboard to show their Twitter feed and their balance history and things like that. So they've basically kind of taken the software that is running mempool.space and adapted it to their what they want to do, what they want to show, their balance history and whatnot. So it is really awesome to see this. We've talked about kind of like proof of reserves and things like that, of kind of showing you have what you say you have and all those different things. So it's great to see them doing this in a very transparent way, where you can very clearly see what their balance history is, and kind of, and then also I guess it's cool to see a government agency like running kind of the Bitcoin Block Explorer and things like that. So I think it's a great initiative from them.
That's very cool. Yeah, I know mempool.space has, venture backing, but I never really fully grokked, its use beyond running it locally and on your own mempool or like looking at the website. But the fact that an institution is using it in this way it's pretty cool. Like this is really nice that they're doing this and almost setting like a standard as to how other organizations or governments could approach disclosing and even showcasing a Bitcoin strategy in a unique way.
Yep, definitely. No, I completely agree. I think it's great to see, and hopefully more follow.
Yeah. Well, cruising along here, Lynn shared a good post for those who are maybe not familiar with Primal or know what Primal is. This is Noster. It's like essentially a decentralized Twitter for all intents and purposes, where you can like, retweet, share, but you can zap people, zap them lightning payments. Um, and the scaling issue, it has been a pretty contentious topic in Bitcoin. Like was it ordinals and runes before they came? People were like, "This is an attack on Bitcoin. It must be shut down." Obviously, fees are back down to like 12, 13 sat V byte. It's under $1.25 a fee. What's your stance on this topic broadly, as far as the fee market and what Lynn's sharing here?
Yeah, I mean, I love like pretty much all of Lynn's takes. But no, I mean, I think it's a good one. I think that it's one of those things where it's been really challenging. Where there was a world not that far off ago where 1 sat per VByte was the standard, and it never really went off of that. And so that was when people were kind of like, well, why do we need Lightning? Or like they were doing some really creating some experiences like Moon Wallet that made total sense in a 1 sat per VByte world. But as soon as fees went anywhere beyond that, it really became either clear why Lightning is important, and also like some of those business models uneconomical. And so I think that So I think that there's always kind of this dynamic that always shifts and goes up and down. And right now, I mean, today we are in it's like, I don't know, like 13 or something that we just saw, like stats per review byte, which is fairly low. It's not one, but it's fairly low compared to what it has been. So there's always this like dynamic that kind of comes and goes. I think to her point here of like, we shouldn't always be chasing like zero fees or really low fees inside of Bitcoin, because, the what you are transferring as far as like the Bitcoin goes is so valuable that it's okay to pay a fee for it, especially when the global nature of Bitcoin itself kind of relies on these fees. So we shouldn't kind of chase this zero fee world entirely, which I agree with. I think that the layer one should always have some fee structures built in, because that's how it's going to sustain itself after all the Bitcoin is mined. But I think to take that like a step further, I think that we should still be working towards efficiency gains inside of the network to reduce fees, because I think the argument is, say in 10 years, Bitcoin fees might be like $1,000 to send just a transaction or something like that. And so in that world, then that really it clears out a lot of the possible use cases of sending anything that's like less than that makes sense from a transaction perspective. So we still need to be optimizing for fees. Now, I think she has the right point of like, we don't need to be forced going to like like low fees on the base layer. We need to be I think scaling it in layers, but she's like be very intentional about it, which I do agree with as well. So I think it's based. I think that there's a lot of the fee structures and fee economics inside of Bitcoin are just an incredibly complex topic, and there's a lot of people that kind of study it, in depth. But it's really interesting, and I think that Lynn has a good take here.
Yeah, agreed. Well, cool. Thanks for sharing some of your views there and insight. In one of our last notes here we have for the day, Blockstream Greenlight nodes hit over 100K, and these are nodes online. So, is Lightning dead, Graham?
Yeah, I mean, no, I would say Lightning is not dead. So I mean, this is cool to see. I would be really interested. I think that like 100K nodes is like a that's not like I'm curious how many of these nodes have sent a transaction, how many of those have a channel open, how many of those have actually any activity at all, because creating 100,000 nodes is actually not that difficult. It's like what is the usage that goes along with it and all those things, where it goes into, I think, the challenges that we talk about a lot with clients is that the things that matter inside of Lightning are like number of transactions, like the volume of the network, the throughput, all these different things, which are inherently private to the network. There's no way to get that data publicly like there is in like layer one, where you can actually see every single transaction. So the things that matter are inherently private to the network. So those things that we can't kind of extrapolate. So it's things like that are it's great to see. I'm glad that they're posting that, and they're certainly growing. I think that there's a lot of like nuance that we need to kind of take in with it, to really understand what happens behind the scenes, like how many transactions are those doing, and all of those things that I think that people really care about. But that's something that we always have to educate people on, is those are inherently private aspects of the network, which are, I think, a good thing as well.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, no, that's a good update. Yeah, I mean, overall, over the next year, what if you? I'd love you to kind of not speculate, but share like some of your insights, what you're seeing and feeling in the market. What do you feel is going to be the outside of number go up? Obviously, everyone loves to like lean on that, but what do you think is going to be the next big needle mover for Bitcoin or Lightning adoption broadly in the space?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot. I think that we're obviously in like this really unique time of like these kinds of compliance and government and like all these different things. I think that, like I said, I think that November is going to be a really big indicator in which kind of way do we move in this more adversarial from like a regulation perspective, or a more friendly version. So I think it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. But then I think that there's a ton happening, as we've talked about, in like Bitcoin layer twos and things like that, where we'll see where the dust settles. I think that there's a lot of stuff happening there that's not necessarily that's not all great or like actually helpful, but I think that there will be things that are actually helpful and really beneficial that I think are going to be very interesting. And I think that a lot of those are, I think that people kind of take this like Bitcoin layer 2 thing is like competitive to Lightning, which I don't see at all. I think that is incredibly complementary. I think that's going to create new possibilities both for these other networks as well as Lightning. And I see Lightning as being the glue between a lot of them, which is going to be, I think, really exciting to see that play out as well.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad this stream went well. Last week, Restream was having, it looked like some API issues or something. It was smooth this week, so that's great. But I appreciate your time, and we'll be back next Tuesday, everyone.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. We'll catch you next Tuesday.
Bye.